Because I feel like every time we start a conversation, there always has to be some remnants of your
Yeah.
storytelling and your where's David been to now? And
If I haven't thoroughly embarrassed you by the start of the intro, I haven't done my job. If your face is not beet red, which is getting picked up in 4K, as we discussed.
every fucking intro too. So this is how we're starting our video today. David, welcome back. It's like you never left, but scheduling you seems to be the toughest thing I've had to do in months. So
Nice.
welcome back. David, you've been in Rome. You've actually been traveling a lot. How has your experience been? Because the last time we talked to you was, my God, I don't know, before clay season?
Probably. I think we
Probably.
usually do our quarterly review.
Yes, that's true. So
I feel like I've
what's
been on
new
like
with you?
I've been on like on the influencer track. I went to Palm Springs. I went to Rome. I'm gonna
You were at the,
maybe
I saw you were at the beach today or something in Long Island.
yes, I went to Long Beach to visit my family. No tennis there,
No
unfortunately.
tennis there, but you get a good break from it.
I did. I'm off on weekends and
Okay.
gearing up for Wimbledon, which is,
Are you
if you
going?
can believe it, it's next week. No, I'm not going to be.
Is it really next week?
Well, I mean, next weekend, like the Monday after next. It's
Fair.
coming. It's the 23rd today.
It's wild.
No,
it's
everyone know how the
crazy.
sausage is made.
That's wild to me. That's wild. But
my next tournament is Cincinnati, for those who are curious.
So, okay, so if we want to see
the big
Dave,
three, Palm Springs, Rome, Cincy.
Well, where I went to school too, so that could work out.
Okay.
So perfect. So maybe we do get to see David. David, we've had a wild couple of weeks, and like we do, I always try to force David to remember what happened on a specific day 4 months ago. But today we're not going to do that. We're just going to start with the French because we're going to start with the end of the clay season. And the first thing I sent you to today was about Iga. And when it comes to Iga, I feel she's already in the conversation of Henin, of Navratilova. I wouldn't say Graf, but with the amount of French Opens that she's won already, where would you put her right now in terms of the greats of Roland Garros?
I actually meant to ask you this, but I guess I'll save it for the vlog to sort of ambush you on camera. But you mentioned Henna, but Iga's only won, not only, but she's currently at 5, which is tied with Sharapova, who also has 5. Now, did you not mention Sharapova because of her longevity, or the fact that the time in which it's taken Swiatek to win 5 slams is closer to Anna?
I would say 2 things. 1, because of the timing, and 2, well, I learned it from a graphic that I saw, but I forgot about Sharapova too, because I feel like Iga will surpass Maria a lot quicker than we think she will. And that's probably
she's only got to do one more.
So exactly. Well, that's what I mean, though.
Yeah, fair enough.
So if she's going to go one more, she's already on track to pass a lot of people that we've held very high for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think these conversations, they are interesting to have kind of on both sides of the equation, because on one hand, yes, it's been very impressive what Swiatek has been able to do. But on the other hand, we're comparing her to players for us, we have the benefit of hindsight. You know, we look at Anna's career in totality, but also the opponents that Anna had to beat to win the slams that she won. I mean, I think when you line up the Grand Slam finals that Anna played and the finals that Swiatek's played so far, it's tough to compare. On one hand, the Kim Kleisters, Mary Pierce, Svetlana Kuznetsova to Jasmine Paolini and Karolina Muchova. I mean, like, yes, Iga has beaten the best of her generation to win the titles that she's winning, but we also don't have the benefit of saying, like, well, what will Jasmine Paolini's career look like in 10 years? What will Muchova's, or even a Sonia Kenin? I think it's weird to like look back on Justine Henin's career, where she was competing with the likes of Serena, Venus, Maria, Maresmo, like these sort of giants of the game, but we also haven't given the time for Swiatek's rivals to cook. I mean, when Justine beat Anna in her when Justine beat Kim in her 3 finals, Kim hadn't won a slam yet. So at the time, maybe you're feeling like, oh, Kim Clijsters slamless #1, not an impressive, victory. but we have the benefit of hindsight to be able to say, okay, look what Kim was able to achieve in the decades subsequent to those finals.
Please subscribe. Thanks.
So, I mean, I think that's why for me, it's most important to look at what Swiatek is doing right now, and what she's doing right now is very impressive and singularly impressive relative to the field right now. I mean, I think the race to the finals kind of speaks for itself. The spread and the distance that Swiatek has created between herself and Sabalenka and Rybakina, I mean, you can't deny it.
No, it's true too, because the matter of fact of how each conversation we talk about when it comes to Iga deals with who she's playing and who her opponent is. Because while we talked about, and when you first started coming on the channel, I always asked you, who's going to be the second? Who's going to be the rival that's going to come up next to Iga? Which is, we're getting more of Sabalenka, which is great to see. We're starting to see Sabalenka kind of take that number 2 slot behind Iga. But the problem is, who else is around the corner? I guess Rybakina after Wimbledon. We always thought it was going to be Andreescu, that we'll talk about later. But it seems like it's a slower, people are moving slower in the, Iga's in the fast lane and everyone else is just on the far right lane going, oh, we'll just watch you and we'll go fast when we want to.
Yeah, I mean, I think Iga is in a position where her game is built for consistency. It is a high margin, but still a highly aggressive, highly athletic, mentally tough game. And she is setting a standard that is so high that someone like a Sabalenka or a Rybakina they're not really built to be that kind of consistent. I mean, even when we look back on Serena, who yes, obviously was dominating the slams, did not have these, maybe, and I'm sure that there's plenty of evidence to the contrary, but in the moment, it feels like the way that Iga has built up these streaks and runs out to these big leads is different even than what Serena was able to accomplish. And because of the fact that Serena played a more aggressive game, I believe, than a more powerful game than Iga plays. So I think it's an interesting conundrum we find ourselves in, where we're looking for an immediate rival to Iga, but an immediate rival to Iga would almost have to be someone who plays like Iga, and she's sort of like a singularly impressive talent. Her game is, I would argue, fairly unreplicable off the ground. It is just such a unique, efficient, effective technique, and we're not seeing anybody else hit like that. And that's why I think the game that Iga plays lends itself to these 20-30 match win streaks at a clip.
So let me ask you this too, if we're going down that rabbit hole with Serena and the power and the absolute dominance that she had on the game, is that just a flashier way of people noticing her game style or her dominance than Iga's, I'm literally going to just out hit you and run down every ball and kind of fly under the radar when it comes to like the star power of female tennis?
I mean, it's sort of, what do you value? And I think like what is very valuable about what Iga is able to do is she is able to run on these streaks. Now, the question is, and whether she is able to get into the conversation with Serena, is whether she can translate those streaks more so at the slams. And I think, yes, she has had the most impressive year thus far of anybody, but she has also had some, blips at some pretty big tournaments throughout the year. And that is something that Serena did not have. And I think that's also a credit to the way that Serena played her game, that she was not going to necessarily get blown off the court by an Alexandrova, by a Rybakina. I say, yes, it is in the field that exists right now. What Iga is doing is very impressive. But, and I do think, I mean, we're talking about, one bad loss here, one bad loss there, but I think it'll if she continues to play like this, it's more likely that it'll start to happen. It'll start to coincide with Grand Slams, but it does not necessarily happen just yet. With the level of dominance that Iga has been able to display at the end of last year, this spring, you would almost think she would have more to show for it than one slam per year. Versus even a Sabalenka, who, but for a couple really bad days at slams, has really been in it for the last 6. And what happens if Arena doesn't get sick against Mira Andreeva? Now, I certainly think Iga has a really great shot at beating Arena in the final, but I think it's a very different look compared to what she ultimately ended up getting.
Which is hard to say, but at the same time, when you look back on like you said, Arena's been in the picture for 6 years, but it wasn't until, was it last year or the year before that she got her first?
last year.
Last year. So it shows you the timeline of everyone's kind of there, but no one's kind of put it together with that consistency. Sorry. Oh, you okay? He's fine. He's gonna crawl into bed and go back to sleep. So, well, at least he's in frame still.
He's not impressed by Iga's dominance. Just
No, he was
bored
not.
him.
He was very bored about the level of consistency with the WTA.
It's like, bring it to the grass.
Bring it, just let me see chaos. I hate the amount of people in the pool right now. We already had police come to my apartment.
Well, you're in a luxury complex, Phil, with a pool in the middle.
No, I'm not. That's the thing.
Oh.
So whoever's letting off a siren needs to stop. That'd be
I don't
great.
hear it for what it's worth.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
But my dog
Okay.
does and I do, and
Oh,
that'll,
okay.
I hope it doesn't freak him out. Okay.
Hopefully you don't hear my air conditioning. I turned it off for Gruskin and I almost died of heat exhaustion because it was
No,
so
it's okay.
hot.
I'm about to turn on my
I'm on my
fan.
hot takes.
Thank you for reminding me. Oh, good one. Well done. Well done. Smart. Speaking, if we transitioned over to one of the people that you already mentioned, since we're on that train of thought, Jasmine Paolini, number 7 in the world.
Isn't that crazy?
Let me be clear before I say this. She's kind of worked her way to becoming a very good player. She's kind of done everything and has proven herself, kind of like how Irani did when she was kind of there, right? And she didn't win the big ones, but she made a name for herself. Same with Flavia. But the thing is, I think what everyone is kind of questioning is how she, one, is the only one on the WTA that's won a Masters 1000 in singles and doubles. And two, how she made herself get into that top 8.
Mhm.
And whether or not she's going to stay there within the next, let's say, 14 months. And I say 14 because her points came very early in the season.
You want to know why she's the only top 10 player who has a Masters in singles and doubles? Is that a question you had for me? Is that an earnest question? First of all, I think she's the only one in the top 10 who plays doubles consistently. So I think
yeah,
that
well,
ups her odds.
While Barty was still on tour, she also
Or
did,
Coco, I guess.
or
Coco
and Pegula before her injury as well. But is Jasmine Paolini a legitimate threat to the top 10, or is she going to not last? That's my question to you.
I think of Joe Conta, who used to famously talk about in almost every press conference she was in, the importance of creating opportunities for success. And right now, Jasmine is creating tons of opportunities to succeed. And those opportunities have allowed her to make a Grand Slam final, make a Masters 1000 title, do things far and beyond, I would say, maybe even Jasmine herself expected of herself at this level in singles. And what I really enjoy about Jasmine is that she's sort of the perfect mix of happy to be here, but also genuinely like hungry for victories. And I feel like it's very hard to balance those two things. And I think we saw with even in Irani at her peak, or as things started to fall apart for her, she was starting to get consumed by the pressure to
recreate that
pressure. Yeah. And pressure from, I don't know who, because I don't know who was really thinking that, what, certainly Irani was at her ceiling when she was at her peak. Like, I don't know what more we could have expected from her. Perhaps, could she have won a French Open? Maybe. I mean, she was at her peak at the time when Serena and Maria were both really trading between the French Open titles. That's rough to really expect that of yourself if you're an Irani, but even if you're a Paolini.
Well, from the Italian media side of it too, when you had 2 women win 2 Grand Slams, when you had a Schiavone, when you had the Flavia, like you had 2 women that kind of led that charge before Paolini, not charge, but you know what I mean, kind of had their moment in under the spotlight. And
Mhm.
now Paolini's filling the void that tennis media has kind of waited for. And
Right.
Italy never really had, what's the word I'm looking for? Italy had very
A standard
consistent.
bearer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And even for the men's side, with Seppi and Volandri, Yannick Sinner was the. Are you laughing because I said it with an accent?
A little. And
Thanks.
it made me think of Davide Sanguinetti,
Oh my goodness. But
former coach of Dinara Savina, circa 2011. Go on. Yeah,
but
no
you
no
know
standard bearer,
what?
but now there is.
But now there is. And
Yeah.
for Italian tennis on the men's side, there's a new ceiling. And Yannick's kind of broken through that. And I think on the women's side, Paolini is the one to kind of get to the ceiling that women's Italian tennis has reached, but not getting to that. We don't know if she's going to maintain that level or whether or not it's going to go back.
Do you think the presence of Yonex Sinner is going to make things make more pressure for Paolini? Because I actually think they would be less.
I don't think there's more pressure for Paolini with the success of Yonex Sinner, but I think the void that the Italian media has had for women's tennis and success is now being filled by Jasmine. But whether or not that's going to continue is my question to you.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. I can't get into the heads of the Italian media, but I would guess that as long as Yannick Sinner is #1 and winning slams, it kind of doesn't matter what Jasmine Paolini does. In a situation where Sinner loses early, perhaps, or doesn't play, and then Paolini doesn't do well, and then she might become the headline because they don't have Sinner to write about. I think Sinner is going to take up a lot of the oxygen for a lot of reasons, but mainly we can give them the benefit of the doubt and say it's because Sinner's #1 and is a reigning Grand Slam champion, and so he will command a greater amount of oxygen from the press versus a Paolini. And so in that sense, it's sort of like a rising tide lifts all boats. Like Paolini doesn't have to be the standard bearer. Every time Paolini does something, it's going to be, and oh my God, she did it again. And she's so charming and she's so friendly and she's so fun to watch. You know, I think like she really ticks all of the boxes, like from whether you're a casual fan or like a hardcore fan, like she is someone you know,
people know who she is.
Paolini, and you're not going to find like a Jasmine Paolini hater. Like, no one's going to, maybe if you're like a diehard Elena Rybakina fan, maybe you're not a huge fan of Paolini right now, but like, I think otherwise she's so, her, even like Elisabetta Cocciaretto, like two really just charming, fun to watch personalities that I think are really great for tennis, men's or women's. So I think, is it sustainable? I mean, I don't know. I certainly didn't think Dubai was sustainable, and she's already proven me wrong. Because I feel like to even like predict is, certainly with Irani, there was a shelf life, but I also think that Irani had more glaring weaknesses in her game, even if stylistically or dysfunctionally they're similar. I think that Irani certainly was limited by the serve, was a bit less athletic, in some ways, and
movement on the court.
Yeah, and much of the story of Paolini is about her intent to be more aggressive. Like people weren't really making that argument about Irani at her peak. So I mean, I think it's just a great story. I think she's, in really great position to make the finals at the end of the year. Like for her, it's an amazing year that she can, hopefully carry into next year but I don't think there's going to be, and I hope there isn't, because it would be a shame to kind of dogpile her if she can't back up the thing that no one thought she could do in the first place. That would be kind of a bummer.
No, which is true, because then you also have to think like with her success too, she kind of sets up that after she's on tour life, like being a pundit, being someone in Italian, not just tennis, but sports, someone that people recognize outside of her just being an athlete, which brings me on to the next person who's been constantly been talked about in the life after tennis is one of your best friends, Danielle Collins.
Ah, what about her?
Well, we've hit the breaking point of people asking her about her retirement.
Sure.
And for her, this is actually, I don't know if you can answer this from the question I sent you, but is this kind of the best retirement season someone can have?
Well, I mean, there are so many ways to retire, and we don't often see somebody announce their retirement this far out and have it go this well. I mean, I think one of the ones I remember is like a Kim Clijsters, who like said, in 2 years, I'm going to retire. And she played pretty good for or I think even 3 years. She set like this ridiculous like deadline for herself, and she played pretty well through 2006. And then the wheels really started to come off the bus in 2007. She was like, you know what, I can't even do this anymore. I'm done.
Yeah.
And most players, and I also think of Annalena Dementieva, who quietly decided to make 2010 her last season and then retired at the very end without having won a slam, but was an Olympic champion. You know, Flavia Pannetta, who wins the US Open, during her trophy speech announces that she's going to make this season her last. So, I mean, and for someone who did not have a slam title on her resume before this, you know, you don't necessarily expect someone to play this well for this long, in many ways better than she ever did.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's kind of unheard of. So I don't know if it's the best, but it's certainly in her genre of retirements, it is certainly, it's unheard of. I mean, you don't see players decide something or make the decision that far out, commit to playing every single tournament. Everybody knows it's your last. And she's even made this point that, you know, people are talking about, you know, this freeing me up from pressure. On the other hand, I could be feeling a tremendous about every tournament I play. I know this is the last time I'm going to play it. And that is, you know, certainly locked up players mentally in the past to know that, you know, they're not going to get another shot at this. So, you know, if she does nothing else for the rest of the year, it would only be a shame insofar as the fact that she couldn't maintain that momentum. But certainly to this point, it is, you know, been a remarkable, all good?
Yeah.
Keep going. All right.
Yeah, keep going. Welcome. I'm on your level now with my camera.
I know, I feel it. I feel like I'm a bit more in HD right now compared to you. This is
thanks.
I'm drunk with power. Yeah, so this is
continue.
It's been a phenomenal 2024 for Danielle. I just like it better than ever. And it just, and something I've tried to convey to her is that, like, genuinely, Danielle, I do believe that the reason why people are asking you if you are if you're thinking of changing your mind, is because people don't want to see this kind of success and not see it continue. You know, there's so many reasons for it. It's, you know, people can't understand why you would quit something when you're doing something successful. Exactly. When you're doing something so successfully, they wouldn't understand why you would quit. They also selfishly don't want you to leave. You know, there's so many like things that go into that question. And I think she's come around to the idea that it is not an intrusive one, but certainly one that she's asking people to stop asking her.
Yeah. And the thing that I kind of liked when she kind of put her foot down during one of the press conferences and just saying, in the fact of just, you guys know why I'm retiring. You know, I want a life outside of tennis. Why do you keep asking me, kind of ordeal, which I get. I mean, and who was it lately? Correct me if I'm wrong. Someone lately said, like, you guys ask the same questions every time. Was it Rybakina that said?
It's Rybakina, yeah.
It's the same questions that you get post match, and now it's just a new question that you get to ask every time she finishes a match. But for her, I mean, for an American tennis player to kind of have this, like, tie the bow neatly, like, it's kind of, she knows her limit and she's done. So I guess people are just fascinated by the fact that she wants to retire despite seeing that success, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the struggle of, like, invisible illness, like invisible ailments, like the things that she's suffering from, her struggles with endometriosis, concerns about fertility. These are not things that are evident on the body, especially when you're an elite athlete playing phenomenal tennis. Like, so I think it's hard, you know, just like mental health is a thing that we struggle to recognize in others because it is not something that is often evident on our person. And yet it is something that Collins, you know, from a physical perspective, is wearing. I'm sure we don't even know the half of what has gone into what has been required of her to maintain this level of consistency in spite of, you know, ailments that she's continuing to struggle from, rheumatoid arthritis and endometriosis. I mean, these are things that, you know, the diets that she has had to undergo, you know, the sacrifices she has had to make, you know, and I think we'll probably get a better understanding of that once this is all over. And maybe we're even starting to see some of the fallout of it. The fact that she's kind of not playing, I don't think she's playing on grass before Wimbledon, which, like, good decision. Do not play any more than you have to.
She's playing the Olympics though, isn't she?
Yes. She's playing the Olympics in singles and doubles. Yeah. It wasn't really evident to me how invested she was in that Olympic race, but, you know, now that she's on the team contesting for potentially 2 medals, so, like, clear that was a big goal for her at the start of the season.
Well, I think for her too, not even just as a goal, just since she's playing so well, why wouldn't you just, is this her first Olympics too?
Oh yeah, it would have to be. I don't think she was not. I don't think she played in Tokyo.
That's the thing, but that's the
I
thing
don't-
though. Like
yeah.
when you're given the opportunity, when you're playing this well, why wouldn't you play the Olympics on a
Yeah, I
surface
mean,
you've
that's a
already
whole other
played?
thing.
Yeah,
I mean, the fact that anyone who has qualified for the opportunity to walk in those opening ceremonies, like I understand that the Olympics is not necessarily what it was in terms, maybe, you know, in terms of global prestige. I think that everyone is tuning in for the way it was maybe 20 years ago when we were growing up. But I think, I don't know, some of these players who have decided, like there are some reasons that I kind of understand that are not being spoken of, but like there are others who are just deciding not to play. And I'm like, girl, why not? Like, this is something
Like-
you could tell your grandkids. Like, I don't know. Like,
just being able to say that you walked the ceremony, you represented your country, and maybe because they're playing for, I guess, there was that sense of pride, right? That when we played, people played the Olympics, and even if your amateurs are still in college, you got the opportunity to show it on a global scale and amongst other prestigious athletes. So why wouldn't you? And now with kind of, it's all about how can I make the most out of my image and money? It's kind of tailored towards that. So I guess I understand why people wouldn't want to play the Olympics, especially for those that don't want to play on clay and clay is not their favorite surface. So
yeah, it's like I respect it, but I don't understand it.
exactly.
Like, obviously,
So
you're allowed to do it or to not play, but I'm like,
but but it's the same way with all these guys like Shelton, Tiafoe, all these guys that aren't playing for the US. I understand you might have another opportunity in the future, but like you said, there are reasons that we don't know or that people aren't really giving the media because they just don't want to, which is fine. It's up to their own prerogative. So it's good to see Danielle kind of going out while doing everything and
yeah,
doing everything on her own terms.
Yeah,
I
completely.
thi-
I mean, I want to read the book if I'm not ghostwriting it, is basically how I feel about the
Do
Danielle
you
Collins
think you'll
story.
write her book? Would you write her
Oh,
book if she offered?
if she asked me to, yeah, I would love to. She is like one of the greatest hawks in tennis. Like
She
something I
is.
wrote about, I wrote about on her from Rome. Like we talked for like 15 minutes and we could have kept going. Like it was just like such a, like a, one of those players with whom you could talk about anything and everything is really, it's rare because you're dealing with, you know, either cultural language barriers, players who are, you know, dealing with, you know, growing up within tennis and maybe don't have a world outside of tennis. Like Danielle is a
Yes.
very like intellectually curious person.
Went to
So
college.
yeah,
And
completely.
not saying that's not like that's a factor, but she's had real world experience outside the tennis world when you go to a place like the University of Virginia.
Yeah,
So there's
and
a
it's a
lot to
question that I've
experience.
right, and it's a question that I've had for her is like, what was success? Like,
Yeah.
was this always the dream? You know,
Yeah.
like some players have specific, I want to hit these certain benchmarks, or was it just to be successful, to have like a fulfilling career where you've made a lot of money and achieved a lot of stuff, and then walk away from it when you're done? You know, like it's
Yeah.
sort of, you know, everybody has different goals coming in, so it's, which also is what makes the job very interesting.
Yes, I agree. And I'm just trying to look at her ranking as of right now. She is 11. She could make year-end finals.
Yeah, I think she's still top 8 in the race, right?
I think. Let me look actually. Live WTA singles race. She should be at least top 8. She's 6.
Yeah, and she was like 4th for I think until the French, so I think that's certainly
Kalinskaya
big.
up to 9 as well. Nice.
Good for her.
Good for her. But speaking of Americans,
No.
Jessie Pegula is back. Love to
I
see
know.
it.
I loved that question in the outline. You're like, is she officially back? I'm like, she's literally back. Like she's been gone and now she is back. I was like, I don't know if this is I don't know if this is the discussion point you were looking for, but yes, she was gone
Well,
and now she is
she
risen.
literally she has disappeared and now she's officially back on tour and she won a title that looks like, no offense, a fucking gummy bear made of metal. That's what it looks
I
like.
mean, that's its own like story, like the tennis coterie of like strange trophies. Someone with more time than myself should really dive deep into that. I mean, look,
I need to do that.
I feel like,
Like
you know, Pegula. Yeah, go on.
no, I was gonna go on a tangent for trophies,
Oh,
but go ahead.
trophies. I like. There's like Pegula. There's Sakari. There's Anjabur. Like sort of like this zombie trio of players who I think everybody was sort of earmarking around January, February that we're just gonna, their rankings were gonna not, if not plummet, you know, maybe not be what they were at the end of last year.
Yeah.
And all three of them in different ways, Sakkari, rallying in the spring, Jabeur winning, making the quarterfinals of Roland Garros, Pegula winning this title. It is an interesting display of life from all three of them, where I kind of thought that they would be eclipsed by players who were playing a little bit better this year, and players who maybe three of them who I kind of thought had maxed out are still around. Now, I mean, I think for Pegula, the goal is still much like Naomi Osaka, although maybe on different stratums, is the US Open is the goal. And I don't know if Pegula necessarily believes in her grass court chances the same way that she might believe in her hard court chances. And this is sort of just gravy for her to be able to hit the ground running, get up ahead of steam, and then really play some really good tennis in
peak at the right
summer.
moment kind of thing.
But then at the same time, she was very close to making the Wimbledon semifinals. Could she have made the final if she beats Vondrousova? In my head, she's still a hard court, grass court player, but maybe the grass will be a little bit different this time for her. And she will certainly be coming in with very little expectation in terms of whether she can make a deep run, which is something that I think she already didn't really have to deal with a lot of. And now the fact that she's coming in under the radar, newly healthy, maybe this is the right, alchemy for her, because she's been looking for it for a while. And maybe this will be what kind of propels her over the hump, because I feel like certainly Pegula and Jabeur, I feel like they're looking for that last big result. And they're looking for that big result before starting a family. Jabeur has said that outright, and I can only infer from Pegula that that's certainly on the horizon for her at some point.
And in that aspect too, when Pegula switched coaches and when she split, that was to be honest, that was shocking, because Pegula was having good results and she was having consistent results in the big events type of way, that you would think that switching up your coach would be a bad thing. But Sakkari also hired her former coach, didn't she?
Yes. She was working with David Witt for a few months. I think they are not together anymore. I need to
really
double check on that one, but I think they have parted ways, because things have not been great for Sakkari really since Indian Wells, Miami, unfortunately.
Well, I was also going to follow up, because we're talking about Pegula, we're talking about Sakkari, we're talking about Jabeur, all three kind of in that same class of competition. Are we done with Sakkari in her hopes of skyrocketing?
I mean, look, I think for Sakkari, it must have been difficult, because she is, in many ways, she got back to, if not close to, pretty much her best, maybe a little bit better in Indian Wells. That's the good news. The bad news is that for all those improvements, she still sort of had the same ceiling. The best, almost the problems she was having weren't the problem. It was the original problem that didn't get solved. And I don't know if
didn't get her past her peak.
I think she is someone who has traditionally, when she's played her best, has been consistent and played one or two really good matches against a top player a year, and has not really proven capable of doing that often enough to put yourself in position to win a slam. And so I think that was sort of the original sin here. The fact that she solved the consistency, great. You bought yourself another season in the top 15, but if she aspires to greater, then that's its own, and I don't know how that gets solved.
Exactly. And for her to kind of bring it back down to earth and get that ultra competitiveness to not overwhelm her, because I feel like that's been the issue for her in terms of mental.
Yeah, and she's another one who's very normal, very intellectually curious, a great chat as well. But I think, and maybe in some ways, maybe too normal. I don't know, she's so grounded when you speak to her that I don't know if it's a knock people used to have on Kim Clijsters, is she too nice? I don't know if it's a question of her being too nice. I think it's just almost to be a successful, an elite Grand Slam winning champion, in many ways, you do kind of have to be a little bit delusional, you have to be delusional, selfish, single-minded, focused in a way.
You have to hit the mark on so cocky that no one likes you. It's that killer instinct that sets people apart. Are you willing to not be friends with these people in order to get to that next level? And I think, who was it? Chrissy Everett during Breakpoint that said, you have to be kind of a bitch. when she was talking about that killer instinct, because
Yeah.
it's true. Because you can't take pity on someone for kicking their ass. That's how I would put it. And if you watch Sakari, like her, not her outburst, but her emotion on court, if she could channel that into a more constructive and positive way, like that could be the defining moment for her to get over that and break through that glass ceiling.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just, it's tough because again, like this is someone who would be a really worthy, great champion, you know, but it's just, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I
Sort of
think
the long
that
and
it's
short of
just
it.
a big question mark. It's just a big question mark. And I think for you, David, I can't thank you enough for joining me on the channel. I think the last thing I wanted to talk about with you is Wimbledon. We
Oh,
are a week out.
yes.
We
So I've been
are.
told.
So I have been told by you. For you, kind of going into the grass season, is it business as usual in terms of who we expect to win, or are we looking at anything interesting happening this year? Is there any new player that we should be looking out for, or is this kind of that Rybakina, Sabalenka, Swiatek kind of look? Or golf? I should throw golf
I'm
in there as well.
sure. I mean, I would be genuinely curious.
Sure,
I
sure.
always forget I'm on camera for this one. I would be genuinely curious to see Iga and Coco, like what they can do on the grass, because I think this is, in theory, this is going to be the most open time of year because historically this has been Swiatek's least successful surface. You know, junior Grand Slam victory notwithstanding, this has been the one where she's taken slam losses to Alice Cornet and Alina Svitolina. Like, it's just different from what the dominance that she's able to put down on clay or on a slower hard court. I mean, this feels like a huge opportunity for Sabalenka to sort of right the ship after a really, difficult emotionally, difficult physically, difficult gastroenteritis season for her. I mean, like the fact that she got sick in the quarterfinals of the French. I mean, that is brutal against a player who you most
She could have
assuredly
beat.
I mean, yeah, she would have won. I mean, like the great that Mira Andreeva was able to hold her nerve, which is not something I thought that she'd be able to do. But the fact of the matter is that Arenas still very nearly won that match, despite being, I don't know, on the precipice of I don't know what.
Dying.
Yeah, I mean, she looked sick, and now she's got the shoulder injury, so I don't know where she will be. I mean, for me, it's a huge opportunity for Elena Rybakina to really sort of put up or shut up, as they say. I mean, like, I feel like we do give Rybakina a lot of grace because she's so preternaturally talented. She is one of the preeminent ball strikers. She seems to be going through something. You know, you referenced it a little bit, her disdain for the press conference format that is sort of out of nowhere and not
of character from what we've known her.
Not in character, and also not really triggered by anything. Like, it's not like she had like a bad press conference moment where someone asked her a nasty question, or people were like especially rude to her or dismissive, or came in with no knowledge of her career and asked like some really like ignorant question,
Some bullshit question that like a reporter somehow got in and just
or like
asked the dumb
confused
question.
her with another player. No one's like asked her about being Kazakh lately. Like, there's been no inciting incident to this. So I don't know. I know that she's dealt with a lot of like allergies, which
she's been dealing with a lot of weird, like, injury withdrawals.
Yeah, and we don't really
like
get the
she's
full
had
story
like
of it.
2 or 3 of them, I feel like, that have been so out of pocket that I'm like, how is this has happened more than once to you in the last 2 months?
Yeah. She was sick in Paris last year. She looked sick in Rome. I mean, like, very like not
pale.
there. She just seemed very overwhelmed by, I'm going to assume allergies. Let's just assume it's allergies. And yeah, I don't really know, because I have to think there's a good deal of her that feels annoyed by the way that the landscape is shaking out. I mean, she certainly knows that she can beat both Swiatek and Sabalenka, and she's probably really the only player on tour who can claim that. I can beat both of those players. And yet
hasn't Pegula done that as well?
Yeah, but at a slam, like where it matters. Like, I don't know. Like,
in a proper setting.
Yeah, I mean, Pegula has other questions that she has yet to answer. Yes, she has beaten both Arena and Swiatek individually at tournaments, but
I saw today that she's beaten 9 out of the last 10. She's won 9 out of the last 10 matches against top 10 opponents.
Pegula has or
Yeah.
Rybakina has?
Pegula.
Pegula has. Really? Okay. I mean, I think that's also a bunch of them happened in Mexico, I'm guessing, and like be like 4 or 5 of them to make the final.
I have to
Yeah,
I have to
4 of
look,
them at
but
least. I think she was
yes.
I think she was 3-0, and yes, that helps. But
Yes.
yeah. So I mean, for Rybakina, that's I thought she was a shoe in to win Wimbledon last year. I mean, when she won the first set against Jabeur in the quarters, I'm like, okay, we're gonna get this semifinal between Rybakina and Sabalenka. Jabeur beats both of them, so what do I know? And it's also a huge opportunity, perhaps one last big opportunity for Jabeur who has played really well on grass the last 3 seasons now. Like, can she do it at Wimbledon? And I think that's sort of the thing about grass, is that we are looking at players for whom experience matters. I feel like you're not going to necessarily get someone sort of just playing good on grass out of nowhere. I think it is a surface that you kind of have to adjust to, and then
you have to have a warm up.
We're kind of dealing with like the COVID generation of like players who, a lot of players retired, players for whom this is maybe like
their second
single digit tournament they've played on grass still. Like even if you count up all their warm-ups plus Wimbledon, it's just not the same amount of preparation. So I think that favors the players who played the most matches on it, which would be your Rybakinas, your Sabalenkas. But again, there's a pretty big, not a big gap, but there's like a big perception gap between the top of the game and everybody else. And so if either of them have a bad day, we could potentially have another, surprising slew of semifinalists/finalists. But I'm excited for it. I feel like the players are in a good enough mood, playing pretty well, provided everyone gets over whatever like Berlin hoodoo they were dealing with, all the retirements that were happening there. Everyone's got a week to kind of reset and get ready for the grass. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's just gonna be a different look for sure.
If you were to pick your finals, who would you pick?
See, that's tough right now because Sabalenka is not number 2 anymore. And where Sabalenka lands in the draw is going to be pretty massive for kind of everybody. Will we get an Iga Arena semifinal? That's
true.
Kind of going to be a big, in a way, like Coco rising to number 1 is like sort of like bad news. Not bad news for Iga, but it definitely makes her life more complicated, because now she's no longer dealing with either Coco or Arena. Now she's dealing with either Arena or Elena. Like that's kind of
worse.
Rough,
Yeah. And that's worse for her.
Yeah. And I am excited to see what Coco could do on grass, because it's sort of like returning to the scene of the crime for her. Like the fact that she was like, had that terrible loss to Kenin and it kind of kickstarted everything. Now, what can she do on grass? Will she be aggressive enough to play well on it?
I think Coco's hit the point too with her. She's reached the stardom that we knew she was going to hit. And now it's the performance and backing it, especially at Wimbledon, where kind of, I guess, her story started for a lot of people, a lot of tennis fans. So seeing that and how she can replicate that kind of every year, because the first thing that's going to happen is when they play the Wimbledon intro for her during a match is like, oh, she beats Venus. Oh, she's 16. Blah, 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 blah. So my great analysis of that subject, I feel like for her, there might be a little extra pressure because this is kind of the starting point to her stardom.
I mean, I sort of look at Wimbledon for her in not totally dissimilar to the way that I would look at Maria Sharapova in Wimbledon. Just because you broke out at this tournament, it does not necessarily mean it's going to be your favorite or your best.
Yeah.
And maybe there will be, to your point, like undue expectations on her because she had that breakout run at that tournament. But I do think this will be, if she can serve as well as she's been serving for the last couple of weeks, and if she could be marginally more aggressive than she has been, this could be a good surface for her. But I do question sort of, because she cannot be a backboard on this court.
No.
It's just not going to work. I mean, so what Angelique Kerber did to her 2 years ago, or even a Amanda Nisimova, like these are players who were able to, outfox her,
hit the ball. Like that's the thing. But David, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. It's always more fun when we finally get this on the schedule. So that way,
I don't know why we don't do this more often.
Because you're busy and
I don't. That's true.
I rarely get a text back within the hour.
Got to put in a request. I
I'm
would
not s-
recommend requesting a time with the date. I find
Okay.
I find it really helpful. And this is actually a strategy that I picked up from dealing with players because now I understand it. Now that my time is being requested of me, I used to go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be really like chill with the player and be like, I'm free this day. Are you free for this? And then you would kind of not get an answer. But if you could ask them, are you free Thursday at 2? You would then then you could start haggling of like, no, actually I'm free tomorrow at 10:30. And then you would get like an exact time. Like asking someone if they're free on a day is sort of just like, I don't know, am I? That day hasn't happened yet. I may have a date.
That's true. Okay.
But now that I know that Otis is your co-host, maybe you'll get me to come on a little bit easier.
Well, he's currently passed the fuck out on the floor.
I've been known to have that effect on people. Just put them right to
There.
sleep.
Yep.
Aw.
So if you guys aren't following David on Twitter /X, I don't even call it X, but follow David on Twitter at DK Tennis. Follow him on Instagram if you want to see his adventures outside of tennis. I feel like that's a good one as well to shout out now that you're
I made
traveling
banana
more.
bread today, everybody.
Make sure you are subscribed to the Tweener Tennis channel. Make sure you are following us on Instagram and all our social platforms. By the way, David, do you know how many people are not subscribed to the channel?
How many, Phil?
Guess percentage. How many people are not subscribed to the Tweener Tennis channel?
It's usually like an inordinate amount when
Yes.
when YouTubers bring this up. So 70%.
No, it's more like 90. So
Ouch.
I know. So all of you that are watching this video right now, make sure you're subscribed and notifications turned on. And David, we will see you hopefully sooner rather than later.
Meet you at the Olympics.
Good one. Bye, guys.